Hello, everyone, and welcome to Youth Empowerment Programs that Work through the Native Learning Center. And just wanted to give you a copy of this recording. We tried to host this webinar on July the 22nd, and we had some audio difficulties. And so, as promised, I've recorded this audio version that hopefully you'll be able to still, sort of watch the webinar down the road, because I know they've had several requests from people wanting to get some of the information. So I'm going to be happy to go through that with you today. Also, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions at jack@unboxedok.com, or you can reach out to anyone at the Native Learning Center as well. So thank you for watching and participating. So we did the poll part of the webinar and started with the question, why were you attending today? And it was really all across the board. There were 50 or 60 people that were on the webinar, and there were several people that were just starting organizations. Some were in charge of a youth organization that exists already. Some folks were just curious about the topic. That's sort of what we found out from the data in the initial webinar. So I like to call this statistics needed, inquire within. And when we talk about statistics, I'm wanting what are best practices that are out there happening across the country as far as youth empowerment programs that exist already. So a little bit about my background. I worked in the education world and was a teacher and was actually a state advisor and worked at the national headquarters for Business Professionals of America, which is a student organization for middle school, high school, and college students. And so looking across the board, I wanted to just highlight 4 organizations that I'm familiar with. One is Junior Achievement, and you can find that they're a nationwide, well, actually all of these are national organizations. So Junior Achievement alumni are 143% more likely to start a business compared to their counterparts, which is pretty interesting to see. FCCLA, which stands for Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America, and you may have known that years ago as FHA or HERO, Future Homemakers of America, but they rebranded, I think it was in 1999. And so 86% of their students who are members of the organization have between a 3.0 and a 4.0 GPA. That's pretty impressive when you look at hundreds of thousands of students across the country, and they're all having success with GPAs like that. There's also a student organization that's called DECA, used to be called Distributive Education Clubs of America. Now it's just DECA, they dropped the acronym. And 91% of their student members reported that that organization had influenced their future plans in some way. And then there's 4-H. Several of you may be familiar with 4-H. They are 2 times more likely to make healthier choices, and that is in regards to fitness, nutrition, those types of things. So all of these organizations have websites, and I would encourage you, if you are looking for best practices or a best model, if you will, to see what some of their programs look like, I would encourage you to take a look at their websites, and you can just Google any of those and their websites will come up. A lot of these also have state associations, affiliations, and so it's possible that you could actually reach out to some of the state contacts in these organizations if you are interested in learning more about them. So why do statistics help us? And I can tell you, I'm not a person that enjoys statistics. It was my least favorite class when I worked on my master's degree. But I ran across this book several years ago, and I'm not sure what edition it's on now. I think they've put another one out since the picture of the one on the screen. But it's called Statistics for People Who Think They Hate Statistics. And if we're talking about building, creating, developing a student organization or some type of youth program, it's very important that we can measure and track success, especially if you're using grant dollars for the program or you're using government dollars. You want to have some way that there's accountability there and how the funds are being used and how it really is improving and empowering youth. So you want to look at specific needs. You know, are we in need of after school programs? Are we in need of, you know, if you're at a housing authority, maybe it's keeping the students engaged some way in the community that they can help through volunteering or through, you know, participating with, you know, maybe they could job shadow some of the employees at the housing authority. You know, what are things that we can do to help guide them and help them be successful? So determine the specific needs of who your audience is going to be. What is it that you can instill in those students to get them excited? Whether, like I said, it could be volunteer opportunities, it could be career development or job shadowing. Those are all great examples of ways that you might engage within your tribe or within your housing authority. The next thing you do, if you want to program per se, you're probably going to you're going to want to establish a membership base and not just necessarily offer events and activities, because there's nothing really sustainable about that. If it's just a one-time shot in the dark, if you will, you don't know how many students are going to participate. You don't know what their specific needs are. And so it's hard to track any accountability or evaluate the successfulness of the program. So I would encourage you to have students sign up for membership. One way to do that is to charge just a nominal fee, just so they've got a little teeth in the game and they feel like they're truly part of the program. And when I say a little bit of money, I'm talking like $5. Some of those student organizations we mentioned earlier, I mean, their membership fees are anywhere from like $8 to $20. So not anything big, but it does give a little pool of money. And then you can actually have the students, if you want to create like a student advisory committee or whatever, they actually have a little bit of a budget to work with if they do want to do something in the community. So you want to determine who the need is for, who your audience is, and then really work on maybe driving some membership to build your youth program. Another thing you can look at is sponsorships. So many times if you're doing community programs, you can get sponsors in the community to join you, and they may not be giving you money. They could be donating, you know, a couple of cases of water. Perhaps you're going to go out and help tribal elders that maybe need, you know, projects done around their homes, like mowing the yard or, you know, touch up paint. And, you know, some of the students agree that they'll go help volunteer to clean up their yard or whatever. And you can get people to sponsor things, just not necessarily money, but time, resources, in-kind services, if you will. Another thing you want to look towards is maybe writing some grants. And you can look locally and nationally. There's a lot of educational foundations out there that are connected to schools, especially like the parent-teacher associations. And you can research that. And a lot of times there's community-based grants that different organizations will hand out for special projects or for programs that deal specifically with youth. So I would encourage you to look in your local community first, because there may be something that could help locally. Next, you want to look at mobilizing community support. And that is, maybe there's a group of parents, or maybe there's a group of grandparents, aunts, uncles. It doesn't matter who it is, but you're going to get people involved in helping the youth be successful. A great way to do that, like I said, is through job shadowing and giving those students an opportunity to learn real world skills. And so if you can partner them with a mentor or somebody that can help guide them, that could be a really positive activity in terms of career development and youth support. You're also going to need to obtain some buy-in. And the buy-in is going to be from the standpoint of both your housing authority, the tribe, the community. You're going to want to make sure that people believe in the program and they want to see the program, because if you don't have the buy-in, it's going to be hard to ever get the support. So I would work on getting maybe an adult advisory committee or a group of people together that would buy into the program and help offer to run it. Because if you've got 20 or 30 youth working in your program, as many of you do, I'm sure, you know, it's a full-time job. So if you can get some other folks that'll help support the initiative, that's a very good, very positive thing. Also, you want to inform your stakeholders, and that's going to be, again, the tribe. If you've applied for grant funds, you're going to want to make sure that they understand exactly what it is that you're trying to do. And that's where determining those specific needs are really going to come into play. Because if you don't have a clear picture in your head of what the needs are and how the youth are going to be part of it, it's going to be really hard to communicate that to everybody else. So definitely fill out your who, what, where, when, how. Answer those questions on a piece of paper and make sure that you're able to explain why you're doing this, who you're doing it for, how the program's going to work. Just answer some of those basic questions. You also want to set benchmarks for where we are now. So maybe that's getting a clear picture of maybe what's the student's GPA averages now, and then look at it 6 months down the road and see if there's been an improvement. So you can measure the program in a number of ways. I would encourage you, if the youth are volunteering in the community, to definitely track their hours. And that way you can say the youth have volunteered, 55 hours in our community over a 3-month period. Those are some powerful statistics and data that will help support the overall program. And then we want to assist in setting goals for where we want to be. And I think that it's really important that you use youth in that process of goal setting, because that helps them feel more ownership. And they're going to want to see it be successful, and they're going to do a better job with following through if they're truly part of the program. So our objectives today, we really want to talk about what are some of those best practice models. We want to think about some strategies for aligning and developing our program that we're going to do overall, and then prioritize next steps. And so there on the screen, you can see that's one of our team members facilitating a youth workshop. I think that was in Phoenix 3 or 4 years ago. It's really important that you understand what motivates youth, you communicate with them, make sure to keep it fun and relevant. One thing you'll learn about the younger crowd today is they definitely have this feeling of, if they're participating in a program, they need to feel like they're a part of it, and they need to feel like they're making a difference. So that's important to note. So youth programs to me are like apples and oranges. You've got to have two sides to the program. And I would encourage you to maybe identify a couple of people that could run each side of the program. You're going to need one person or a team that can do program operations and the administrative stuff, if you will. So who's going to make sure that bills get paid, and who's going to make sure that, we have the insurance that we need, and we have permission slips and that type of thing. And then you're going to need the other half that's focused on student engagement. And I really feel like those are two separate skill sets. Obviously, the program operations and administrative side, you're going to need some very detail-oriented folks that are part of that process. If you do start like a nonprofit, for example, a 501c3, which you could do, if you do that route and you actually have a checking account and you have articles of incorporation and bylaws and that sort of thing, you're going to want to think about having a program audit every so often, just for transparency, so you can show everybody exactly where the dollars are being spent. And allow your youth to be part of that process as well. Let them help plan things. It may be more difficult to have them signing checks. I don't know that I would go that far, but I would at least engage them in the overall management of the program. That gives them experience, and it definitely helps lighten your load just a little bit. We didn't make it to this question in the webinar, but I was going to ask if anybody had experience working with a 501c3. And this is a nonprofit organization. So if you're not familiar with 501c3s, I would encourage you to go look them up, do a little bit of research about how you file the paperwork and how you get started as a true nonprofit organization. So here's some questions to consider. If this is a standalone, new, not-for-profit organization that requires a checking account, then you're going to need to have a name for the organization or the youth program. You will need to file articles of incorporation with the state that you're in. And in some cases, I think The tribe actually has a process that you can go through to register the filing as well. So I would check with the tribe and also make sure that you file with the state that you're in. You'll want to apply for an IRS tax exemption as a 501c3, file for that tax exemption and get that so you don't have to pay taxes. Apply for a state tax exemption. You'll want to draft some organizational bylaws. Make sure in those bylaws you're going to include how they can be changed down the road if you find a time that they need to change. Again, are you going to have a board of directors, or are you going to have a student advisory board that helps make decisions on behalf of the organization? So you want to spell all of those things out in the bylaws, including appointing or electing directors or some type of governing board. And, you know, the youth could vote on that. I mean, they could run for office and you could have a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer and allow them to hold those positions. Or you can elect an adult board of directors with maybe a couple of youth representatives on it. So it just depends on which way you want to go and probably how your funding is set up and how the program needs to operate. If you can have more youth involvement, great. If the way you're structured is you have to keep most of the control of the program, that's okay too. Make sure that you obtain any required licenses and or permits from the state. So like if you're selling a product or service, you know, if you're having a bake sale, make sure that everybody's had their safe serve certification. If you're running a concession stand or something, you just want to make sure that if you are selling things that you do a little bit of research from the tribe standpoint and from the state and get any permits or licenses that you need up front. All right. And so I did note on here, most youth nonprofit organizations do qualify under the 501c3 status. So that's where I would start. If I were creating a new organization, I would go look there first. We have 5 different components of youth empowerment programs. The first we've talked a little bit about, and that's your mission, your vision, what's your purpose. You know, are you going to run membership campaigns? You know, oh, come join us for a pizza party and learn more about what we do in our organization or in our program. And then you may want to have some kind of an ambassador program where you have certain people that are spokespeople that go out and do presentations. Maybe they go out and present to the Rotary Club or to, you know, maybe your tribal council or to maybe the city or county commissioners, but to bring awareness to the program and exactly what they're doing and how they're giving back to the community. Next, you'll want to have a program piece. And when I say a program piece, that is, how are you going to engage them specifically? All right. Are you going to have educational programs? Maybe bring in guest speakers. Maybe you're going to go on some field trips with them. Maybe you're just going to bring them into the tribe and give them a tour of the tribe and have different speakers come in and talk about what they do on the job and why they love working for the tribe. And, you know, so that's an example of one program that you could offer. There's also outreach type programs, which are reaching out and doing service in the community. There's civic engagement. The civic engagement piece could be encouraging people to get out and vote, whether it be for tribal council or whether it's participating in a state or national or county election. There's community service, and then you can look, there are some national initiatives out there that you can participate in. So you definitely want to check that out as well. All right, the third piece of the youth program or organization is the financial component, and that is operations, the budget, transparency, accountability, and audits, like we discussed earlier. You know, thinking about who's going to sign the checks and who's going to keep the checkbook and how are entries going to be made? What type of accounting system are you going to use? Are you going to have a debit card? Does the program need to have a credit card? So those are all things that need to be considered, especially from a legal standpoint for a 501c3. The fourth piece is governance. And the governance is the articles of incorporation and bylaws. And you can certainly check out some of those. If you need an example, shoot me an email and I can send you an example. Again, my email is jack@unboxedok.com. So you can reach out to me if you want an example of that, and I can certainly find one that fits kind of what you're doing. You want to think about who's going to make decisions. Are you going to allow the youth board to make certain levels of decisions before it maybe goes to you as a program director? You've got to identify that, and you want to make sure that your decision making is noted in your articles of incorporation or bylaws. Typically, your bylaws is what's going to have that piece in it. Who signs the checks? And then how are you going to conduct meetings? Official meetings of whoever's governing your board. Typically, I would recommend Robert's Rules of Order. If you're not familiar with Robert's Rules, it's a set of parliamentary procedure guidelines for how to run a meeting. Talks about who can make motions, how you second a motion, how you debate. If you've heard those things before in a meeting, that's basically Robert's Rules. So whoever your decision makers are, I would encourage you to look. You can get just like a abridged or like parliamentary procedure for dummies because the actual Robert's Rules of Order book is very long. It's a big book, but you might want to just get a cheat sheet. So when you orient your new board members or your new youth that are going to be conducting meetings, you might want to give them some training on how to run an effective meeting, and that it's everything from how to write an agenda to how to take minutes during each meeting, and then how to actually make motions and call for quorums and that sort of thing. So we could do a whole presentation on a whole webinar on Robert's Rules, and I wouldn't even be able to get through it in an hour. So that's something you may want to think about with your decision-making party, is if they want to use Robert's Rules to conduct their meetings, because you can make note of that in your bylaws. Then you've got your development side. And this is going to be one where it's always going to be a challenge. That is, how are you going to make money to do the programs that you want to offer? Are you going to have fundraising? Are you going to do sponsorships? A lot of places actually try to build buildings for the youth to work in or to participate in, kind of like a YMCA, but they have a place that they'll try to do a capital campaign so they can build a building to host the youth program. So those are all things you're going to need to consider as you're thinking about the development and fundraising side of the world, because you want to, it's not going to be helpful if you have a youth program but don't have the money to do anything that you want to do. So that's obviously going to be a piece of your program, is figuring out who's going to give you funds, how you can get maybe local grants, that sort of thing, and then get some local sponsors. And I would encourage you to look at all of those areas and, let youth help. People have a lot harder time telling a young person no to raising money than they do an adult. So if you can get a couple of youth that are really driven, you might charge them with the task of trying to raise some sponsorships for you as well. And make sure that when your youth are out in the program presenting to stakeholders and to community members about what they do, they can offer a time at the end. If you want to make a donation to the organization, send them to, send them to you with your address and your phone number. And so again, even just by a youth presenting the program and then asking for a simple donation at the end, you can raise a lot of money that way. So some examples, we talked about what offices youth could have on a board or in an advisory position for a youth program. Notice towards the bottom of the screen, it says most youth nonprofits have an adult serving in an advisory or director capacity. And some youth nonprofits are governed with a majority adult board with youth representation also serving in a voting capacity. So again, it's just how much leverage you can give. You may be in a program where it says no, the youth can't participate in decision-making in a decision-making process in terms of a board. And so if that's the case, then you may have to recruit some board members that are adults and maybe just let the youth be on the board, but in an advisory capacity. Really, these 5 areas, you can sort of divide those into the areas that you need assistance with in the organization. So your president and secretary are going to be primarily concerned with governance. And this really gives them some great experience to have these positions, especially if they decide that they want to run for an organization, maybe in their school or in their community. So it actually gives them some life experiential learning experience that's pretty exciting. Again, your president and your secretary, they're going to be focused on those meetings that are happening, maintaining your bylaws, making sure everybody's doing things the right way, following Robert's Rules of Order, etc. You'll notice on the far right-hand side, you could have a vice president of development, and their primary job could be raising money for you. On the far left-hand side of the screen, a VP of membership. And so that position is just focused on recruiting new members, new youth members, okay? And maybe it's not just recruitment, but it's on, having pizza party nights or, whatever, having movie nights or something along those lines, just to keep all of the members of the program engaged. So definitely think about that. To the right of that, you see a VP, which would be Vice President of Educational Programs. And that is, you could have a vice president that's in charge of planning programming, maybe hand in hand with you. Okay, we're going to take a field trip on this day, or we're going to participate in Earth Day, or we're going to participate in some kind of national service day. Again, like I said earlier, where maybe kids are going out and helping some of the tribal elders clean up around their house or patch up paint jobs or just do small tasks that the elders need help with. Those would be some great examples of ways that you could engage students or your young people in the tribe. And then you may have a secretary. The financial piece, you may have a treasurer. If you do have a treasurer, obviously, this is not necessarily that they're signing checks, but it's if you're maintaining the financial statements, it's giving the youth a copy of the financial statement before meetings so they can say, this is how much cash we have on hand. All right. And they're also going to be the one that would help you keep the budget. All right. Again, a youth probably would not be in a check signing capacity, wouldn't be carrying around a credit card, but they would be reporting to the membership of exactly how much money they had. So I was going to do a poll with everybody, but we're not going to get to do that. So I am asking, what motivates youth today? Do you think it's food, social media, purpose, or recognition? And what they have found, there's been several national polls conducted recently, and youth today are most motivated by purpose. Believe it or not, they have to feel a sense of purpose, and they have to feel like what they're doing is very meaningful. So in other words, if you just have meetings all the time and it's not fun and there's not really a reason to do the things that they're doing, they're not going to have a sense of purpose and they won't continue to stay involved. So they need to feel like they're there for a reason. That's why I said the more you can engage them, even in those board positions, the better, because then they're gonna truly feel like they're making a difference. So iGen Gen Z, that's going to be the group that is newest today. Media consumption is different, even from millennials. So, the last group we really heard about was the millennials. Well, this new group is now iGen Gen Z. All right. They prefer cool products over cool experiences. All right. Just look at iPhones. They are very entrepreneurial and tech savvy. So use that to your advantage. I will tell you, if I'm doing a workshop with a bunch of youth, sometimes if there's youth that get there early, I ask them, I say, hey, can you help me fix this? Can you help me with the technology setup? And can you get it going? And here, do you want to hold the clicker and you can pinch the clicker for me? And they love it because they feel empowered that they really serve a purpose. And entrepreneurial is a really good one because they're all about being their own boss and trying out new trends and setting up things. So definitely take advantage of that. They do respond better to edgy campaigns. And look at that last bullet. Our attention span has gone down to 8 seconds. So you have about 8 seconds to catch their attention. So keep that in mind. I will tell you one thing I do with when I do trainings and workshops, a lot of times I will bring in beach balls and I'll have the students blow up the beach ball. and then I give them a permanent marker. And as we're going through the workshop, they write what they're learning, or they have an aha moment. They write it on the beach ball, and then they toss it to somebody else. And then they write on the beach ball something that they've learned, something that someone else has not already said. And then at the end, you go back, they give the beach balls to you, and you go through everything that they learned. So that's pretty interesting. And it's a very good way of getting feedback. So social media engagement. What we're finding today, number one is Insta or Instagram. All right. Number two, Snapchat. 3 is YouTube. 4 is Twitter. And 5 is Facebook. So if you're working with high school students, Instagram is how they're all connected. All right. They only look at us old people now because we have Facebook. But most of the younger people today, they are like too cool for Facebook. Okay. That's a has been. Okay. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to communicate with youth, they're not going to be on Facebook. They're going to be on Instagram or probably Snapchat. So I know that I tell you that to save you a lot of stress, because if you tell the kids that you're going to be posting stuff on Facebook, they're going to say, why? You know, we don't have Facebooks because it's not as fast. Instagram and Snapchat are like obviously instant. And you only have 8 seconds to catch their attention, remember. So there's a little bit about social media. So when training, meeting, or coaching, number one, think about your room setup. Make sure that it's fun and laid back. It's a safe environment where they feel like everybody's accepted. That is very important. So like in a U shape, don't set it up. Try not to have it in a classroom, like a traditional high school classroom, because it's very intimidating to walk in, and it's nothing special. So think about how your room's going to be set up. Engagement is critical. Again, within the first 8 seconds. So as soon as they walk in the door, have somebody at the door passing things out, or, when I do workshops, a lot of times I have candy on the tables, or I have all these little clapper things, these toys on the tables that they can pick up, Play-Doh. You'd be surprised, and they love it. It's also a way to engage all of your learners, because we all have different learning styles. So make sure that you're trying to realize that there's 3 different learning styles that you should be appealing to, and that's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Kinesthetic are the people that are hands-on. So if I'm just talking to you, you're really only applying to the auditory and the visual. And the kinesthetic folks, they're not learning anything. But if they've got Play-Doh on the table too, everybody's engaged. Offer the youth responsibility of being note takers or facilitators and timekeepers. Again, they love purpose. So have them engage. Just, ask them, hey, do you want to be the timekeeper for me? Do you want to monitor the door for me? They love engaging in that type of stuff. So make sure to allow them those opportunities to get involved. All right. Explain why they are needed and what they can get from you, because they do want to know what's in it for them. So you need to explain that right up front, what they're going to get from the program, and they're going to have to see it as being usable and purposeful. And then even ask somebody to read the agenda. And I'll tell you, when I'm teaching classes, even with adults, if we have a book, like a textbook that we're having to go through, I even call on adults to read. The only thing you want to make sure is that someone who may not be a good reader, you don't want to embarrass them by asking them to read something if they struggle with reading comprehension. So that's the only piece you need to think about. But you could ask somebody ahead of time, hey, do you feel comfortable reading the agenda for today? And task them with that. And you need to be doing all 5 of these things within the first 3 minutes. All right. That way, as soon as they're walking in the door, they're engaged. They feel like there's a reason for their being there, and there's purpose. Okay. Remember, I've talked about this in a couple of other webinars, but it's applicable here too. There's actually an 80-20 rule, and it was developed by Pareto. a philosopher, I think in the I won't say in 17 or 1800s, but what we learned from that is that 80% of our time should be engagement, activity, and facilitation, especially when learning. Only 20% of the time should be instruction, lecture, or speaking. So if you have a 1 hour meeting, 80% of that time should be focused on engagement some way, activity, and facilitation. And only 20% of the time should be someone standing up speaking. That's very important. You will find that the youth are much more engaged and they will participate much more in the process if you allow them to engage. The absolute worst thing you can do is put up a PowerPoint presentation and try to talk for 45 minutes because you're going to lose them at probably 10 seconds. All right. That's how they're used to learning. They have to learn that way in school. And I think COVID's really challenged that because we have had to go to online instruction. And so things on the computer and things virtually, are just not as fun anymore because we have to do it all the time. So when you can get a group together and engage them in activities and games and that kind of thing, it's very positive. There's a couple of programs that we have done. One, we do a life-size Monopoly game where we use tabletops and we actually make the Monopoly pieces that go on the floor. We laminate them and then put them on the floor. So when the youth come in, they get dice and they roll the dice, and then each property, like Boardwalk and Park Place, are representative by its booth space. And so like one booth would be the tribal higher ed department. One booth would be tribal career development. One booth would be the local community college. Another booth would be the university. Another booth, see what I'm saying? So it's all vendors from the community that kids can engage with. Another booth may be how to fill out financial aid. And so what you do, the kids roll and they can go around the board as many times as they want. And what we tell them at the beginning is we have fake Monopoly money. And we tell the youth, the more you engage at the booth, the more money the vendor will give you. And then whoever ends up with the most money, I think we had like a 65-inch TV that we gave away. And so then we had like 30 different prizes, all the way down to just $5 gift cards. So basically everybody got a prize if they participated in some way. And we did that whole thing on a budget of, gosh, I want to say we did it on less than $1,000. That's one example activity. Another one is there's programs called reality stores, and that's teaching personal finance. So it's the same type of scenario, except the booths that are set up. Okay, they'll go to one booth and they'll find out how much money they make in the job that they want. And I can pull all that for you if you need it. But you can go to the Department of Labor. They have salary sheets out there, and you can sort it by region. So you can get down to the regional level of where your reservation or tribe is located, and it will tell you what the average pay is for jobs in that area. So what I do is have the kids pick what they want to do, then they look it up in the salary sheets and find out how much money they make, and then they go to the next booth, which is housing, and they pick out what house they want. And so at the first booth, we give them a budget worksheet, okay? So they go find out how much money they make, they write that in, then they go pick out what house they want, then they pick out what car they want, then they go to another booth, and it tells them how much insurance is going to cost. And what they often find is that they overspend on the car, and then when they find out about how much insurance they have, they can't afford it. So they have to go back and trade the car in because they can't afford the insurance. And then they go to another table that's like entertainment. So they rotate through these rooms, and then basically they'll fill out their budget worksheet. And at the end, we have a debrief session where we talk about, oh, well, who ended up with money, who ended up with no money. Usually, I would say about 60% of them have overspent. And so we talk about how we have to align our lifestyle with the job that we want and what education levels we need to get those jobs and how do we get that. So those are just some example activities. So if you're interested in any of those, reach out and I can kind of guide you in that direction. So one thing everybody always says, so Jack, what do you do about phones? They're so frustrating. All right. You will not win the phone battle, period, period, period. You will not win it, okay? You either take them from everybody and put them in those little shoe racks on the door, or you use them to engage. And that is give them a hashtag and say, post this stuff we're doing today on Insta and hashtag it on, Twitter or wherever you're going to post it, and make sure just capitalize on it. Okay. Have them run a social media campaign for you. But that's what I'm finding is that, most schools take them. And so they feel like they're being not treated like young adults, which I get it. They're not, they're truly not adults yet, but I wouldn't want to get into the debate of trying to take somebody's phone from them. So I just try to use them. So I'll do surveys like on SurveyMonkey, or there'll be certain apps that we have, and I'll have them actually do it on their phone. So I may do like a voting. I'll need them to vote on something, and I'll put it in SurveyMonkey, and then I'll have it projected on the screen, and I can refresh it in real time, and we can see what the outcome is of the vote. So engage with them. Don't take them away, and don't consider them I was going to say, don't consider them to be a bad thing. Just try to figure out how to capitalize on them. And then partner up whenever possible. So not everybody, you shouldn't have to start from scratch. Look at some of these organizations that I've showed you. What are some existing models that are already in place? All right. Think about what age group you're serving, and then how you would serve each different age group. So if you have younger kids or older kids, obviously if I have elementary, middle, high school, that's 3 different types of activities that I would want to engage in. And so if you're looking for younger, junior achievement and 4-H have programming out there that starts as early as elementary school. All right. So if you're looking for elementary school programs, and I'll tell you, junior achievement's more based on business and entrepreneurship, but definitely take a look. They've got their scope and sequence models out there and everything. And, if you can borrow from some of that, that's great. So definitely look for resources as you're getting started. I do have this listed as unboxedok.com. We're currently transitioning to dobbinspatterson.com, and that is D as in dog, O-B as in boy, Y, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam, Patterson, PATTERSON.com. So very soon you'll be able to go out to dobbinspatterson.com, and then we'll have some resource tabs listed out there. I'm not sure if they've got them posted yet or not, but then also look at, there's the websites of the organizations that I talked about earlier. So keep all of that in mind as you're thinking about developing the program, what all is going to go into it. There's my email address. That will work until the end of September, and then it'll actually transition to jack@dobbinspatterson.com. Like I said, if you think of questions, if you need help, you want guidance, please feel free to reach out. We do have a lot of resources, and I'll be more than happy to share those with you, as well as give you any guidance. If you have any questions about this presentation, and if you just have some questions or want to bounce an idea off somebody, definitely give me a call or shoot me an email. My phone number is 580-745-4393. And that pretty much sums it up. I want to thank you for participating. I love doing this type of workshop because about 25% of who we serve are actually educational associations. So we have a lot of experience in developing leadership programs, personal finance programs for tribal youth programs. It brings us a lot of joy to get to work with programs like that. So you're in a special place doing what you do. It takes a very special person to want to engage students and sort of give back and help develop and mentor and guide them. So I would like to thank you for the job that you do, because it's not an easy job. And so definitely think about the reward that you get out of it at the end of the day, because there will be times that you get stressed. I always did. when I was running student programs. And I would go, why am I doing this again? And then a kid would reach out and go, that maybe I'd worked with 3 or 4 years before, and then go, oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have gone to college. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's why I do what I do. So, but it does take special people to run youth development programs. Okay, well, I appreciate you participating, and I think there should be a survey that's sent out with this presentation. So definitely make sure to give us some feedback. Again, I apologize for the audio issues that we had when we were scheduled for the webinar on the 22nd of July. I will look forward to seeing or hearing you all in a webinar again in the near future. Thanks a lot and have a great day.